Welcome back to Sonic Speed viewing? We'll have to figure that out, as I do want to talk about the various Sonic shows at some point, but for right now, I feel like chatting about the recently released Sonic Prime, a brand new CG animated show exclusive to Netflix. So far, only the first 8 episodes have dropped, so this isn't going to be a review of the whole season, let alone the whole show. I'm just going to be talking about what has been released. But before we do all of that, I'm going to take a minute to shout out today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you've been on my channel the past few months, then it should be no surprise to hear me talk about these folks. They've been a huge support to the channel, and I am a big fan of their service, which is all about getting you a website and helping you build and maintain it, making every single step of the process as simple as possible. You run a local business? You thinking about starting one? Do you need a clean looking portfolio for your work? Or maybe you just want to put together a really creative Christmas gift in the form of a website? I've seen it done before, it's super charming. Point is, the internet can be used for anything, and it's only limited by your imagination. And Squarespace is the best place to help bring your ideas into reality. And if graphic design isn't your passion, don't worry. They have plenty of pre-made templates, but for the more creative, don't you worry, those are fully customizable. And they have all sorts of setups for specific portfolios. It's easy to use and understand, and I'm even talking about the back-end stuff that helps you keep track of your growth as a business. It fully integrates with social media platforms, helps you put together ad campaigns. This stuff is super expansive and never overwhelming. Whatever kind of site you're thinking of, Squarespace has done it, and they'll make sure you get yours exactly the way you want it, and help provide inspiration for the spots where you're drawing blanks. Seriously, you could have a fully functioning website all your own in less time than it would take to watch a single episode of Sonic Prime. And to make it even easier, if you head over to squarespace.com/gameapologist, you'll get 10% off your first purchase. You'll be supporting me and supporting yourself. Once again, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and let's get on with the show. Sonic Prime is, overall, yeah, it's pretty solid. It's not bad. This is a kid's show, and it feels like a kid's show, and I don't think that is enough of an excuse to give you subpar media for children. That is important, and you should be giving them high-quality stuff, but at the same time, yeah, you kind of have to know what you're getting yourself into. This does have its ups and downs, but overall, it's a pretty fun time. The show starts us off with Sonic and his pals confronting Eggman as he attempts to capture the Paradox Prism, a new magic gem introduced into this show. During the fight, Sonic accidentally shatters the thing, splitting the realities and in turn his friends, and creating the Shatterverse, with each shard of the prism creating its own universe, where we get variations of Sonic's friends. It's up to Sonic to undo his massive mistake, as well as help out his alternate reality buddies with whatever problems they have in their own worlds. A lot of folks have already declared this the best Sonic show we've ever had. Bluntly, I don't think that's too high of a bar to clear, and this does lack in some spots where other Sonic shows shined. It doesn't have a strong wit of Sonic Boom or the bold tone of Sad AM. But again, all of those shows have their own faults, and even Sonic X, which was the closest the show's ever got to the game canon, still falls short of truly capturing the action of Sonic outside of a handful of standout scenes. That's a problem through every single Sonic cartoon out there. All of them, except for Prime. It's fast, it's fluid, it's well choreographed, and often creative in its battles. Sonic is designed to move, and this show never forgets that. Sometimes the models look a little weird, but the emphasis on animating these characters is front and center, and I absolutely appreciate that. Like I said, there are some really fun fights, the standout being the showdown between Sonic and Shadow, really showing off their different abilities and skills. And that's actually true of a lot of the characters here. Tails flies, obviously, but I forgot how long it's been since we've actually seen Knuckles glide and climb. And Rouge actually is sleeping like a bat, all upside down, and it's just the best. A silly little detail that just made my day. And I appreciate that this show never forgets where Sonic's come from. He is a video game character, and this feels like a video game show. Outside of the obvious bits of love to the many traps and obstacles in the games, we also see Sonic utilize abilities pulled straight out of the games, but also expand on some of those skills. There's a couple of times he kicks off or bounces off objects like it was a game of pool, something you could actually kind of do in a few puzzles in Sonic Frontiers, which is a little janky in the game, and I kind of wish they'd polished this up and used it in actual combat. Prime does that here, as well as pull off a Cyclone move that, yeah, kind of reminds me of Sonic Wind from Sonic Heroes, but I loved how it's used here. It kind of made me wish the Psyloop could do something like this. There were just more than a few times I kept saying to myself, oh man, I wish I could do that in a game. This is something I've enjoyed about the recent comics, showing abilities and ideas that might be fun if Sonic Team ever took advantage of these ideas, and I'm glad I can say the same about the show, especially since we can actually see them in motion. That's not something you can do in the comics. But yeah, not all of it's perfect. This is not the most detailed CG show out there, and it looks a little rudimentary in comparison to some of its contemporaries, and some spots clearly got more love than others, so we might as well we'll talk about the settings. It might come off a bit tedious for fans to not only see Green Hill again, but have so much emphasis put on it. Technically, the show never actually leaves Green Hill outside of a few scenes in the Shadowverse, but it is fun to see the variations of this one setting, just like we see variations on the many characters. And at the very least, the show did make its own assets, bless its heart. But yeah, as my buddy Channel Pup has mentioned before on Sunset City, he doesn't mind Green Hill being set up as Sonic's home. That could at least justify seeing it as often as we do, and I have to agree, and I'm glad the show does exactly that. If you're gonna use this place so often in all kinds of Sonic media, then give it a little more value. Make it feel like a home to our character, and in turn, it will feel like a home to the audience. That said, I do think some of the landmarks the show chooses to focus on are a little strange. We have the loop-de-loop, as they call it. Thought that was just called a shuttle loop, but whatever. It's more weird that there's only one here in Green Hill Zone. And they also focus on a palm tree. There's definitely more than one of those. My favorite being that floating one right here. They do at least address that, not the floating one, but the fact that they're focusing on one single palm tree, it is for a story point, and it is cute. But still, you couldn't have thrown in something like one of the many totem poles we see in Green Hill Zone. I've always wanted a little bit more clarification on these things. That said, I'm happy Green Hill is here. In 30 years of watching Sonic cartoons, I can't think of one time they've ever used this place. So while they do need to cut back on its use in games, I'm fine with it here. And so far, they've done a decent job of shaking things up when it comes to Green Hill in different dimensions. Each variation looks wildly different compared to the other, but like I said before, it's clear that some environments got more attention than others. Maybe that's an homage to the level design of Sonic 1. New York City is a version of Green Hill where Eggman, or more correctly, the Chaos Council, have won. And I love the Art Deco vibe of this place. Makes me think of Robotropolis, makes me think of Eggman Land, but it also makes me think of Batman the Animated Series and BioShock. I love how grand and colorful everything is when you look at the skyscrapers, but when you get to street level, you see a stark contrast with how dirty and miserable things are. But then you shift over to the treetops of the jungle universe and it looks, well, it looks like that. In the pirate world, well, you really only have to worry about water and some crags, so yeah, not much to talk about here. Outside of a random ancient statue in the background, that's kind of cool. I do love how subtle that is, and there are some formations very similar to Chaos Island in a different dimension. So yeah, Frontiers does get some love here. And while yeah, some of these worlds do look bland, I do think they go out of their way to pay homage to Sonic cartoons of the past. Got massive Sonic Sat AM vibes from New York City and their version of Rouge, who is basically just Sally, and the jungle world, which gave me Heavy Boom vibes, and Knuckles here is basically just Sticks. I do think these choices were intentional. There's a lot of love and care to the history of the franchise. I also think they were very intentional with the wording of this line. Even when Sally's off the table, this poor girl can't get a break. Sorry, Amy. Which leads me to what is probably the most important talking point for a lot of the Sonic fanbase: the personalities and relationships of these characters. For me, I think they did a pretty good job for the most part. I do like IDW and Frontiers' version of Sonic well enough. I do see him as an older, more experienced version of the character, but I've said plenty of times I do miss the energy and sass of the other interpretations. I do think that Sonic can sometimes be a bit of a bitch, but outside of that, I'm having a good time with this version. He's a bit impatient and impulsive, but dearly loves his friends. He's not perfect, and as cocky as he can be, I do appreciate that he does reflect on his own faults and tries to improve. I do appreciate when they actually treat Sonic like a teenager and let him screw up. He thinks he has it all figured out right up until he doesn't, and it gives this version of Sonic a place to grow from. I like this take on the character, and I like Devin Mack's take on the voice. I love the energy he brings, and honestly, I really enjoy the voices and personalities of everyone else here, for the most part. And that's also extra fun because they let everyone have variations of sorts, so all these voice actors can really play around with these characters. Sonic and another character we'll talk about a little bit later are the only ones who aren't affected by the shattering of the prism, so they don't get different interpretations. But the secondary cast does. Everyone has a different interpretation across the different worlds Sonic has to explore. So for example, where in the Prime universe you'll have Tails be the genius best friend of Sonic, in another universe he's a bitter loner, and in another or he's a feral animal. When I first heard of the premise of the show, I was a little worried that this would mess up the character growth and pacing. We barely spend time in the main universe before it's shattered, and every single time we go to a different world, Sonic has to reintroduce himself to a brand new set of the exact same characters we already know. But they did a decent job bypassing these problems by using each world to laser focus on a specific character. Dystopian World, again, is the standout here. All the characters feel fairly fleshed out, with Amy and Tails being the most prominent. But when you move on to the Jungle World, it revolves mostly around Amy, and when we move on to the Pirate World, it's clearly all about Knuckles. This allows Sonic to reflect on his relationship with the core version of that character and uses that to help solve whatever problem this variant is facing, and he in turn takes away some lessons on how to better appreciate the people in his life. I think Rusty Rose and Nine are going to be easy standouts for fan favorites, but I do also enjoy Pirate Captain Knuckles. His story is corny, as you would expect for a pirate world, but his voice actor really turned me around on his performance. See, main timeline Knuckles, just like the current in-game version, just sounds like he's trying too hard to sound like a tough guy. The voice just sounds fake, and it completely takes me out of the story, and I really don't like how he sounds here either. But when you move over to New York City, he suddenly sounds like Raphael, and then he sounds like Styx in the Jungle World, and finally, in the Pirate World, he sounds like Mr. Krabs. I love every variation on the voice more than the mainline one. It's ridiculous. And this is where I was originally going to compliment one single voice actor for having a bunch of range, but as I had it pointed out to me by one of my patrons, OzJam, it seems that Knuckles has two different voice actors. Adam Murata does Knuckles for the Prime universe, and Vincent Tong voices every other version of Knuckles we've seen so far. As far as I can tell, this is the only character they've done this with, and I have no idea why. Vincent does a decent Knuckles. Why not just have him do every version? No offense to Adam, this is so confusing to me. Also, I do appreciate them showing off Hidden Palace in Knuckles flashback. Yeah, I know the pixel art isn't the best, and that's not where they met in the game, but I still appreciate the effort. I'm mostly happy just hearing the music from Sonic and Knuckles and seeing Hidden Palace again. But now that I think about it, I kind of feel like this flashback and the Knuckles flashback from Frontiers should have probably swapped settings. But anyway, yeah, other characters. Big is here, and so is Froggy, and that's all they ever need to be. Rouge, as of yet, has not had a story solely focused on her, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't make her the greedy pirate captain, but I'll wait to see where her story goes before I pass any more judgment on that front. In two timelines, she's clearly the leader of the group, and as I mentioned before, in the Resistance world, she's giving me major Sally vibes. But when you move on to the Jungle world, you see a little bit more of Rouge mixed in there. She's a little bit more deceptive, trying to manipulate Sonic to doing what she wants. Both were great, but unlike Knuckles, I think the best interpretation we've seen so far in the show is her regular Prime version, giving off her classic jewel thief / secret agent vibe. This is easily my favorite take on her voice, which is impressive considering how very little we've seen of the Prime variant so far in the show. Also gotta say, I really loved Amy's voice too. Doesn't quite sound like previous iterations of the character, but also sounds just like Amy, if that makes sense. Perfectly fitting for the character, especially how she's written these days. And her variations are fantastic. Rusty Rose got real dark real quick by showing off her flicky power source, and Jungle Amy is just a badass. Tails is solid too. I can't say this is my favorite version of his voice, but Nine is an absolute standout, and a very interesting variation on a character we've known for 30 years. This is a Tails that grew up without the support of Sonic, having to make it on his own in a world ruled by Eggman. It shows us that he's as capable as ever, and yeah, he does have what it means to make it out there on his own, but without Sonic around, he's become cold and bitter. And it's a stark contrast to the version of Tails we saw in Sonic Forces getting himself ready for a colonoscopy just because Chaos showed up. Eggman, while I'm thinking about it, doesn't get that much time to shine, which is a bit surprising. At least not yet. We see a bit of him at the start, same as we do everyone else, and then as a variant and a part of a larger Chaos Council, which, as far as I can tell, are various versions of the Good Doctor at different points in his life. This does give the show some variation in antagonists, as each of the Doctors has a different personality, but again, I'm going to refer to my good friend Channel Pup, as we were talking about the show a little earlier today. He mentioned the Chaos Council kind of takes some of the spotlight away from Eggman, and I have to agree. These are just 5 stereotypical cartoon characters. And yeah, they all have big personalities, don't get me wrong, but honestly, I just want to see more of Eggman himself, especially since he's voiced by my favorite Vegeta. And yeah, so far, great job. Another character that hasn't had a whole lot of screen time yet, but I know a lot of you have been watching like a hawk, is Shadow the Hedgehog. And I'm happy happy to report he's done very well here. As I said, doesn't get a lot of screen time in these first few episodes, but honestly, I think a little shadow goes a long way. He's a special treat, and he's very well voiced. No offense to Kirk and his interpretation of the character, he is a phenomenal voice actor in his own right, but we all got our biases when it comes to these characters, and I've always preferred that more airy anime villain take that we heard in the early days of Adventure 2 and Sonic X. The Prime version of Shadow brings more of a balance to those different interpretations. Still a grumpy boy, and still loves to solve things with violence, but his actions feel a little more calculated. I think this is why I don't really like Sonic being the guy to tell everyone to chill out and talk things through. I like the Sonic jonesing for another hit of adrenaline, which does lead him to making the occasional mistake that would really piss off Shadow. I'm talking about a Sonic that would just straight up troll the Dark Hedgehog a bit just because he finds their battles fun. Meanwhile, Shadow, who obviously respects Sonic on some level, is still the first person to be fed up with the blue blur's nonsense. That's the kind of Shadow I like. He isn't going to make a mistake out of anger. That's Knuckles. But just like Knuckles, Sonic would be the only one out there who would even dare push his buttons. Every single time Shadow attacks Sonic, it feels completely justified, and it's great. Their fight was a lot of fun, and I really like his voice. In terms of story, he is the only other character outside of Sonic to remain the same, as he was quick enough to react to the shattering of the Paradox Prism with a Chaos Control and managed to keep his original self intact, occasionally able to reach out to Sonic from the Shatterverse. And the 8th episode ends with the two of them finally meeting again, with Shadow ticked off because Sonic caused all of this. It's a bit of a shame we don't see variants of these two hog boys, but I like their characterization so far, and I'm glad there's someone else out there outside of Sonic who understands what's going on and can call him out for it. Shadow is technically a good guy, so you do have to go out of your way to find an excuse to get these two to come to blows, and I really like Sonic and Shadow as rivals, and I love their fights. But yeah, I do have to agree, a lot of their more recent battles have felt very forced across different media. Prime, at the very least, does a good job of explaining Shadow's animosity towards Sonic. I think blowing up a home universe is a good enough reason to punch somebody in the face. All that said, the show isn't perfect. While I do think there are some clever bits of humor here, especially in the subtle bits of animation, a lot of them are a bit forced, and some scenes drag on way too long for bits that just aren't worth it. They even do that terrible, "well, you're probably wondering where I got here" cliche. And no, I didn't think it was cute in a Sonic movie either. And they do a Captain America reference twice. And as I mentioned before, some of the stories and environments could have used a little bit more love. And the flashbacks to previous episodes are a bit much. This was made specifically for Netflix. We are binging these things. And even if we aren't, the stories aren't exactly complicated. We can keep up. And yes, I am speaking for kids too. They're not that stupid. It's also painfully clear they made a lot of this just to sell toys. They go all Kingdom Hearts and give Sonic new shoes and gloves with different abilities in each world. Some look okay, I suppose. I'm not really digging these Crocs or these over-designed shoes. It's just too much ankle, man. It's gross. Put on some socks. And no, don't actually me in the comments. Yeah, I know. I ran track and cross country too. I know this is what racing shoes look like, but this is making me deeply uncomfortable. You're showing too much skin, Sonic. You're a hedgehog, not a whore. Sorry, everybody. Been watching a bit too much classic Family Guy. Then again, according to some, you so has Sonic Frontier, so maybe I'm in good company. Anyway, yeah, reintroducing Sonic to the same characters over and over, unsurprisingly, does get a little old. If the show keeps going, I really hope they expand on more than just variations of the same 6 characters. But all that said, for what we got here, this is a fun time, and it gets better as the episodes carry on. Ending things with the Chaos Council invading other realities and Rusty Rose coming across her pirate counterpart were cool little twists. I'm glad to see the variations of each character commingling instead of just staying separate, isolated adventures. This means the animation team can keep reusing the same settings, but also means we can flesh out these characters and narratives. This show is doing its own thing, but it is staying true to all of Sonic's history, showing us love for the classic games, adventure games, even some love to the latest game out there, and even shows that have come before. Yeah, maybe Sally isn't coming back, but her spirit is still here. And just like SatAM, we once again have a dystopian Sonic story that's told better than Sonic Forces. Even the Resistance emblem is better. Look at that. It's a cracked egg. That's adorable. Anyway, yeah, that is going to wrap up my initial thoughts on Sonic Prime. And yes, I know what else this team has made. I don't want to talk about it, but I did promise we would do something covering Ben 10. So yeah, expect a video covering all the Ben 10 games sometime in 2023. But yeah, before that, while I am still working on a couple of Frontier videos, I do want to cover something more Christmassy related. So expect something something along those lines next time. And before we leave, of course, I want to give an extra special shout out to all the patrons who've been supporting me. If you'd like to pitch in yourself, I do have a link in the description. Just $1 a month gets you stuff early, gets you access to our Discord server, all kinds of fun stuff. And now that my voice is back, I'm going to give an extra special shout out to these fine folks here: Kyle Winter, Cyrus the Skeptic, Joseph Duncan, Sonic 2 Blue, John, Josh Strider, Casey Rose, Faizan Razul, Xanderoni the Painter, Hatsworth, Tiny Jericho, Ginger Bob, Jack of All Spades, Tristan Trap, Meekers, Dun Dun, Quote, Resident Fanboy, Miles the Prower, Jeremy Singer, Mr. Boojay, World's Greatest Bard, Sam Webster, Dwight Graham, Fishflop, Lucas Lipker, The Bad Pal, Jonathan Dobbs, Mr. SP, Cecil the Glade, The Dark Neon, Stefan Plotkonica, 3 Monic, Graham J. Hall, Lenny X, Wayne is Boss, Jamie Chevalier, Lederick, David 20 Apologies, Jimmy Duke Stir, STR? What is that? Anyway, thanks for the Patreon support. The Lumberjack, Wiki, give me that funky beat. Yo, my name is Mick Nick and I'm the web on the... Like, how do I not have that completely down by now? Can we just get a new one? I'm so tired of reading that one, Otis. NBTV, Mute, Trash Baphomet, Autumn from Twitter.com. Yes, Uni's the boss. Try saying it in your best British accent, and I hope you get well soon. Mick Nick, aka Icky Nicky. Well, now you got other people doing it, Otis. We're crying out loud. Do you know how many people I have from Europe that are in this patron? Do you really think I want to piss them off? Of course I want to piss them off. Yes, Uni's the boss. I can't do it. Spend every week with Channel Pup. How do I not know how to do a British accent? Anyway, Jin Seotame, Nezend, Enerjack 5, Grayson Coniger, Spades the Nocturne, Ken K, Then 101, Paxton Bisbee, Darren 7, Stevie Cole, who, by the way, put together that amazing thumbnail. Thank you so much, Stevie. Link to her work is going to be in the description as well, so be sure you check that out. Where's Arnold? 3 Rule 4, Twilord, Asir Warrens of a Deadly Fate, Paisley, Eric Delgado, Cody Gracius, Kodinsky, Jamo Art, PK Durbar, Crimson Rose, Give Up Your Children, Separate, Sonic PAJ, Mooniscient, or is it Moon Innocent? Moon is it? Oh dear, words are hard. Zagard Lagan, and if any haters say I'm not funny on YouTube, I let them know I got sponsored, saying toot toot wiggity wiggity word up Mr. Boojay. And I guess word up to Squarespace as well. Roxas the Cat, Godzilla, Makuta of Salt, Gleam the Anomaly, Jonathan, Alexander Watson, Calais Presley, Native Nerd 27, Neil Gompa, Conan Kudo, Sharif Pai, Aeon 3 Valafor, Infamous.j, Peg. Goodness golly gracious, that was a lot of reading, and thank you so much for making that a wonderful problem of mine. You guys are amazing. And thank you to everyone who showed up for our watch party of Sonic Prime. I'm going to be trying to do more of those kind of things in the Discord server. Gotta get back to hunkering down on videos, but yeah, expect to see me around there a little bit more often. But until next time, that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys again, and I'll catch you next time. Toot toot, Sonic Warriors.